memory due to some psychological event. What I'm talking about is a definite impact to the brain, resulting in loss of memory from that time on.
So it's still linked to a physical injury?
It's related to a physical and anatomical abnormality of the brain, yes.
Which you weren't informed of that the accused suffered?
No, it's as a result of the impact to the brain. So there is a disturbance of the function of the brain, leading to loss of memory. And that is very common after even minor impacts to the head.
There is another possible explanation, Dr. Vitouveau. What about the question of the accused malingering?
Yes, the question of malingering is almost impossible to exclude at this stage. I say it is impossible to exclude. I'm sorry, my lord.
Just for the record, malingering is a proper medical diagnosis, as I understand it.
Oh, yes, yes, it is.
And just for the record purposes, that is when a person is feigning illness with an obvious motivation to do so.
That's correct.
But as I understand your evidence, Dr. Vitouveau, you are merely given theoretical comment on a version not having had any physical examination or history upon which you base the comments.
That's correct, my lord.
Thank you, my lord. I have no further questions.
Taken somewhat by surprise with that. I was taken somewhat by surprise with that. Stop it. Just one moment. Doctor, there's one or two aspects in re-examination we get some clarity, perhaps. You were asked by my learned colleague whether you, at any stage, examined the accused. Obviously, that would have been sometime this year when you first were approached by this man. You indicated you did not examine him.
That's correct, yes.
Did you have sight of an MRI scan of his brain that was done this year?
I have examined the MRI scan of the brain, yes.
And did that show any abnormalities whatsoever?
It showed abnormalities.
No, this is the evidence. It did not emerge in your perspective. Nor did it emerge in cross-examination.
May I just
All
confirm?
these witness status also did not be made privy to this information.
No, this, yeah.
May I
It's the good of the reason why to the
We'll have to call it a general process. For everybody to
consider the new evidence. If that's the option, that will be the option. There will be fairness all around. I'll call it a journal for everybody to consider this new evidence that you introduced.
Might I be permitted to address your lordship for you?
Introducing evidence in the MRI scan which is not before the court.
My lord, might I be permitted to address your lordship before the lordship makes any findings?
Yes. No, I'm not saying you can't do it. What I'm saying is this, you're introducing an element of surprise. No. Because you did not leave this witness on that chief.
Lord, the witness in his report refers to the MRI scan on two occasions, number one. Secondly, my learned colleague asked the witness whether he examined the accused. She was also asked, would it indicate on an MRI scan whether there's any, whether it show up, and he said no, not necessarily. In response to what the evidence of Dr. Tiemensma was. If I may just be permitted, I'm pretty sure this is a neutral aspect. It doesn't take the matter any further for us or for the state, whatsoever.
if there's anything new emerging in your
Re-examination, I shall immediately call an adjournment for the state to consider.
I've no doubt the lordship will do that. But what I think you permitted is to delete this evidence, and I'm pretty sure that this is really not going one way. Thank you. Dr. Vitouveau.
Please, do not put the leading question.
I'm sorry, Lord.
That was not the leading question to the witness.
I haven't formulated my question yet.
Start with the first one. Carry on, let's see what you do.
Thank you. Dr. Vitouveau, I asked you, did you have sight of an MRI scan of the accused that was done this year?
I did, Lord, yes.
Did that MRI scan show any abnormalities that is relevant to this history of him
Yes,
being
Mr.
conscious?
That's a leading question. You should ask him, what did the MRI scan show?
Doctor, what did the MRI scan show?
The MRI scan is normal except for two minor unrelated congenital abnormalities.
Congenital.
In other words, abnormalities that he is born with.
And those abnormalities, would that have played any role?
No, those
abnormalities are completely coincidental.
Then, you indicated also in the question by another colleague about the manner in which, you test about the manner in which the loss of consciousness or concussion is reported to you. Could you explain to His Lordship, generally speaking, when people approach you, how do you go about determining whether or making a finding that the relevant patient could have suffered a concussion? How do you go about doing that?
So, Lord, a concussion
concussion is a temporary alteration in neurological function. So normally the patient is perhaps briefly unconscious, complains of amnesia, and has post-concussional symptoms such as headaches, dizziness, and so on. So the diagnosis is primarily one of history.
So what do you mean by that?
It's primarily what you're told. You're told that the patient is, fell, hit their head, has amnesia. The physical examination, the neurological examination, is almost inevitably normal.
Then, with regards to a question that was put to you about the brother Rudy from Breda, and you refer to the limited movement that he may have been possible of. And you testified and said that the initial blows to his head while he was on the bed, that could have rendered him unconscious.
I think that's likely, yes.
Is there any way for you at this stage to voice an opinion of the length of that unconsciousness?
No, that would be speculative, my lord.
And then, on a question of my learned colleague, you stated that there was no physical reason, I'm still referring to the injury sustained by the brother Rudy from Breda, no physical reason why he could not have been capable of reasoned movement, but you indicate that's just been a theoretical possibility.
Referring to a physical brain lesion.
Yes. Now, with regards to that, you also asked by my learned colleague, for the period of time that Rudy was on the floor, at the bottom end of the bed belonging to the accused, Henry van Breda, whether you have any way of saying whether he was conscious or semi-conscious, or dizzy or coherent at that stage. You indicated he could have been. Do you remember that evidence?
Yes.
Do you understand me to say that he could have been in that, or he could not have been in that? Those two possibilities are
I have no idea what his level of consciousness was at that stage.
Right, and then could I ask you just to give your attention to your report again, Exhibit FF1 on page 2. It's also a question that you gave the evidence about that the patient would have no means of knowing whether he suffered a loss of consciousness or whether he merely suffered a loss of memory. In the top paragraph in your report, you made the following statement: it's not possible to determine ex post facto whether the accused had lost consciousness or whether he merely lost recall of the incident. Apart from the accused or the person himself, they cannot say that. Is it possible for you as a medical expert to say one or the other?
No, it's not possible to determine that. My Lord, that's where you would normally rely on the history.
Thank you. That's the question I have.
Just a quick question. I understand, Doctor, you and Dr. Karumo give evidence in several cases together?
We've given evidence in one other case together.
You work together?
Yes, indeed, yes.
It's also a witness in this case, apparently. We have no idea yet.
I don't know.
This is the question of, when a person loses consciousness as a result of loss of oxygen, how long can that person go without the oxygen before he sustains brain damage?
Only a few minutes, my Lord. But depending on how profound the oxygen loss is,
There's a loss of oxygen.
if you have no breathing, you lose consciousness rapidly. So, for example, in a strangulation case. Yes.
In any case, your evidence agrees that if there is a loss of oxygen, even for a short period, then there will be some brain damage.
That's correct, my Lord, yes.
You gave the example of a sportsman operating without knowing if they had a concussion.
That's correct, my Lord, yes.
In other words, a rugby player could go for a try while concussed.
It happens to the Stormers all the time, my Lord.
But that's the point.
Well, we leave all the shots at this point. Do you know that, when you say that the point
For that question is simply this. The concussion doesn't affect the decision making of the person concussed,
No, it does affect the decision making, my Lord.
does
It,
it?
it,
But
it,
if you could score a try, it's still functioning normally.
no, the patients are frequently not functioning normally, which is the reason why it's important in sportsmen, for example, to take them off the field.
So, but is his functioning ability impaired?
That's correct, my Lord.
How? To what extent and how?
Oh, that varies enormously. But if you do neuropsychological testing on patients who have been concussed, they normally take 10 days to fully recover. That's on average.
But say in this instance, if there had been a concussion, correct that there was a concussion, you cannot exclude the possibility that for the period of time thereafter, the person, in this case the accused, was in a position to operate normally.
To operate fairly normally. It's perfectly possible for somebody who has been concussed and who has no recollection of what has happened to function fairly normally.
A period of 2 hours, 40.
That's correct, my Lord, yes.
Is it possible to have amnesia the period the person is unconscious? So the period the person is unconscious, but will he be able to remember the events immediately after regaining consciousness?
So it's if you lose consciousness, you have no recollection of what's happening to you while you're unconscious. The post-traumatic amnesic period is the period of amnesia or loss of memory after you've recovered consciousness. And that period is variable. And very often patients regain patchy recollection once they start to recover.
So we expect some recollections of what happened.
So as you're recovering, you start to recollect events.
clearly on record, if I understand the evidence correctly, for the period of time the patient has suffered either concussion or loss of memory.
Yes.
From, let's say, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. That period of time, that memory is never regained.
That memory never recovers.
But I think what His Lordship perhaps has asked you, the way I understood the question, and I would like to know it as well, would that person be able to recall what happened prior to him losing consciousness and to what happened to him after he regained consciousness?
Okay, so
The period, my Lord, prior to losing consciousness, so let's say prior to the assault, you can lose memory from prior to an assault, and that is termed retrograde amnesia. So you can have somebody who is, say, involved in a car accident who doesn't recollect some period of time before the accident occurs. And that's known as retrograde amnesia. And that is normally an indication of a more severe brain injury. Then the recovery after you've regained consciousness, that is post-traumatic amnesia. And that does not recover. That loss of memory, in my experience, never recovers.
That's for the 2 period of time in my example.
exactly.
But when he regains consciousness from what he does thereafter, he will have normal memory again, or should have normal memory again.
If your recovery of memory,
Memory, my Lord, may be patchy, but what you remember, you continue to remember, and that normally continues to improve.
There are no further questions there. Doctor, thank you very much for testing.
Thank you, my Lord.
And good luck.
Thank you very much, my Lord.
My own colleague would have been taken time, but I know it's difficult to determine because we didn't. Yes. We did not, in the light of the indication that Concussion would have taken the entire, did not make arrangements for the other witnesses, but we are for today now. We have 2 witnesses ready for tomorrow, and they'll be here and we're ready to proceed tomorrow.
No, that was not expected. Given the witness testimony, it negated a lot of cross-examination. Indeed.
Is there an agenda tomorrow?